Welcome to Thoughts Roundup. You know, I try not to talk about old times too much. Number one, people don't want to hear it. And there's an awful lot of people that cannot relate to it because they have not been anywhere around what there was during the beginning of things, or even at my time. I'm 87 years old, will be 88 in August. But I remember the church whenever I was a boy. Do you know the church? When you said church, it was a different meaning or something, different sound. Now you think about where you have the youth programs, or you think about where you have the mass meetings or the choir, and you think about where you have socials and the dining hall, and it's church, and it means a lot yet to folks, or it better. But yet, church, whenever I was a boy, it had an altogether different meaning and sound. It was like everything about even the physical church, it was sacred to us. Everything about it. The pulpit, the platform. We started off, we didn't have a baptistry. We went down to the creek or to the river and baptized. But everything was so, boy, you wouldn't have dared to desecrated the house of God in any way. You know, we was lucky to have any kind of a church. Started off with prayer meetings. Then we got church. Somebody would donate the land. And there was no money to buy land. Somebody had to give some land. And then you didn't have things to go through to build. If whatever you wanted to build, you just built it. And there was no inspectors. You didn't have to submit anything. If you could get any materials together, you just went out and built it. One man was driving some stobs in the ground, and somebody said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm building a church." He said, "Well, where's your materials?" He said, "I just used them all for the stobs to show me where to build." But then somebody, there was no way of getting any money other than what people sacrificed. There was a very few people ever gave anything beyond sacrificial giving. That's all they had, because there was just no money. And so to get a little building, we were so proud of it. Then later on, people started raising money to build. Selling peanut brittle. They'd make the peanut brittle, ladies would meet up and make the peanut brittle, and they'd sell it here and there in the different places, or sell different things. And folks got a little better jobs, and they found out it was a little bit easier to set aside a little money from the church, for the church. Everything was sacred. Everything was sacred. I want us to realize, you know, a lot of times people give several $1 million and build a building now. Well, thank God for that. I'm glad for it. If we don't lose the feeling of how sacred the church is. The platform used to be almost like the holies of holies in the tabernacle. And it was such a privilege and honor to be on the platform, and everyone had to be living right, to sing. Hey, you know what? I remember before there was ever a choir, they would get up and say, now all that want to help sing tonight, come on the platform. And do you know the ones that wasn't living right wouldn't go on the platform? Nobody had to say anything. They didn't have to cull them out. They just wouldn't go. Well, then later on, the choirs, people started getting choirs together. And that was a nice era of time to go to the camp meeting, and they'd have a choir. Maybe the choirs would be made up of several volunteers from churches around in the area, and have someone really knew what they was doing as a choir leader. Everyone looked forward to that time before the preacher came up to preach, the choir to sing. Folks, it's all changed, and I don't fuss about it. I don't. And there's so many things I wouldn't want to go back to. I wouldn't want to go back before air conditioning. I wouldn't want to go back before PA systems or microphones. And I wouldn't want to go back to all that. But I do think we need to be real careful about having the proper love and respect. You know, there was a man in Texas who was buried in a graveyard in a cemetery. And people didn't pay it no mind that he was buried there. And finally, one afternoon when the church was having a conference, a man from the city came in to the conference and asked could he say something. And they said, yes sir, go ahead. He said, well, we have a grave here that's one of your old preachers, and it doesn't have a headstone. I wonder if we could take up an offering this afternoon and buy a headstone. And he said, I work with a cemetery and I'll be happy to install it if you could do that. The pastor said, does anyone know this gentleman that he's talking about? An old man stood up and said, yes, I know him. He said he came to this town to start a revival. And he was in a revival, and they took him and drug him up and down the street behind a wagon because he was preaching the gospel. And when they finally beat him up and turned him loose, he crawled up on our front porch. He crawled on our front porch and was passed out. We came out and found him. We took him in. He told us he was a preacher. When he finally revived, and he stayed, it was 3 or 4 weeks before we could get him to where he was well. And so they asked him. Well, he stayed a little while and helped them raise the crop. And then one morning he said, well, I got to leave. They said, oh, you don't have to leave. He said, yeah. He said, I got to go start that revival back. He went right back up there where they had beat him and drug him up and down the streets, unconscious, and started that revival back. That's what I'm talking about. There's so much that has gone in to the starting and building and the foundation of our churches and this wonderful truth. I admonish you and I beg of you, and I want to do it myself. I want to have a love and a respect and a deep appreciation for where we came from. God bless you.